And just a reminder to everyone, this is being recorded. So if anyone has a concern, it will also record your faces. If you do not want to have your video shown, please turn off your video.
I don't understand question number 2.
Good question. Okay. So have you or do you know of somebody who has been in a panicked situation?
Oh, okay.
Thank you. For anyone who is just joining, if you'd like to answer the poll, there's no grade. It's just
For number 5, do you just pick the one that most applies to you?
yes, please. Looks like we have over 50 people attending. So very nice. I'm going to give you 30 more seconds to answer the poll. And then we're going to launch, show you the results.
When I hit submit, isn't it supposed to go?
It goes to me. It's all good. All right, I'm going to end the polling. 3, 2, 1, done. And so you are seeing the results.
This is a pretty cool tool.
Thank you. Good. All right, we got Central Marin in the house. All right. I'm going to hand it off to Captain Ryan Day now, who will be leading us through this training. Thank you to everyone. I'm going to try to keep everybody on mute, including myself, but I will be providing some questions to Captain Day as we go through. And please use the chat if there's something you'd like to communicate to us. And then we'll also be open for Q&A in a little bit. So thank you, Captain Day.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Rachel. Hello to everybody. My name is Ryan Day, captain with the Central Marin Fire Department. I've been there since 2006, and I was with several other agencies here in the county prior to that. So I've been in the fire service for 20 plus years. Seen some things, still learning things. And it's nice to see all these faces here willing to come out and talk. And I believe the more people that go through this program, which is new to me, and thanks to Rachel for bringing me on board here. I feel like the more people that know how to do these things we're going to talk about tonight, the better it is for everybody, us and the general public. So hopefully the goal is here to learn something and take back with you and be prepared for if one of these things happens to you. So as Rachel said, if any questions come up, please in the chat window, or if something along the slideshow presents itself, just to interrupt or say something. And if you could watch the chat window, Rachel, that'd be great. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to share my screen and we're going to do the slideshow. Throughout the slideshow, there are portions. This was meant to be an in-person in a group setting. So we'll make some adjustments here for Zoom. And this is one big ball of clay. So this is our first time doing it. And we're going to learn some things here.
Yes, everyone is our sort of our test case. We haven't done this training. This is the first time we've done this training. And so we'll love your feedback as we go along. And yes, the recording will be posted onto the NRG website as well as sent out to all the attendees.
All right. So this is called Until Help Arrives. You guys are the help until help arrives, 911 or first responder. Okay, anticipate this to be an hour and a half to a couple hour discussion. We're going to talk about how you can help someone with life-threatening injury survive. We're going to walk you through several basic skills and discuss tips you can use when faced with a life-threatening situation. This training fulfills no medical certification requirements associated with formal medical courses. So this is all just very on the surface stuff. And if you would wish to do it after this, there's all sorts of courses, which I'm sure you guys being involved in CERT and NRG and a lot of block captains, you guys are involved and may have already done some sort of medical training, including hands-on CPR, first aid, et cetera, or a former responder yourself. Okay. This is for the classroom. Breaks, we'll take intermittent breaks if I start to feel getting long-winded or long stares, or we can do quick couple-minute breaks in between sections. We can do that. Restrooms are in your house. You should have identified your emergency exits already. And I did talk about the duration of the course. So some of the videos and pictures you're going to see, there's a couple 911 recordings, contains graphic images and audio clips from real life events. None of it too, I don't think, disturbing, but if you find it that disturbing, you can turn your screen off and rejoin after. So trauma is the leading cause of death in Americans under age 46. Serious injuries require immediate action to stop someone from dying. While the nation's emergency medical responders are quick to arrive, any delay between injury and the initiation of care can result in death. Those nearest to someone with life-threatening injuries are best positioned to provide first care, which should focus on the most essential actions, including moving someone away from ongoing danger, stopping severe bleeding, positioning the injured so they can breathe, and keeping them warm and providing comfort. This course looks to educate all of you about the important role you can play providing these potentially life-saving interventions. So here's a breakdown of the course, the sections we're going to talk about. We've divided into the 5 steps, and you should always use good judgment in applying information learned from here tonight. Act within your comfort zone, and as always, be mindful of your safety as well as the safety of others. It's a really important thing to note, because we don't want anybody becoming victims themselves or complicating the situation. And taking action is always better than simply standing aside. So in the introduction part, you guys are going to learn about the critical role you play in the emergency medical system. In step 1, you're going to learn about why 911 operators ask certain questions. And we'll talk about ways you can talk to 911 and better explain the situation. Step 2, we're going to learn how to effectively evacuate the injured from ongoing danger. In step 3, we're going to learn effective methods of bleeding control, including providing direct pressure and the proper use of tourniquets. In step 4, you guys are going to learn about positioning an injured person who is conscious or unconscious to promote or maintain an open airway. And in step 5, we're going to learn ways to help, comfort, and talk with the injured, as well as considerations for working with children and those with access and functional needs. Each of these objectives reflects the goal of our 5 steps featured in this course, also focusing on different aspects of providing help to an injured person in a life-threatening situation. The first section of this training, we're going to learn about the critical role you play when you act to be the help before help arrives. We're going to examine some people why some people act and why others do not, explore how the stress of a life-threatening situation may affect their minds and bodies. The purpose of this is to set the stage for the entire course by providing you with a basic understanding of your role and a framework for discussing each of the subsequent topics where specific skills are presented. And with that, we have a short video.
It was a little strange to sit down to someone that you've never met before and decide that you're going to grab their hand and tell them everything is okay.
I screamed. That's all I remember doing at that moment. I knew I was going to wreck.
I remember feeling like we had to do something immediately right now.
The day started out like any other day. Wasn't cold, wasn't hot. My friend called me that morning and he said, I'm going to take out my Harley and you got your new bike. And so let's just go out and have some fun.
Captain Day, we don't see the video.
All of a sudden, I see the woman
I'm
on the
sorry.
motorcycle just flying.
We don't see the video.
I just remember
Okay.
saying, stop the car.
We pause
I remember
here.
getting thrown, hit.
Sorry about that, guys.
Yeah, we're hearing the sound, but not the video.
Can you guys see it now?
No.
It says to click on the picture, not the,
Yeah, I clicked on the picture.
It was a little strange to sit down to someone that you've never met before and decide that you're going to grab their hand and tell them everything is okay.
I screamed. That's all I remember doing at that moment. I knew I was going to wreck.
How's
I
that?
remember feeling
Now
like
we see it.
we had to do
Okay,
something
sorry, guys.
immediately.
Thank you.
The day started out like any other day. Wasn't cold, wasn't hot. My friend called me that morning and he said, I'm going to take out my Harley and you got your new bike. And so let's just go out and have some fun.
All of a sudden, I see the woman on the motorcycle just flying through the air. I just remember saying, stop the car.
I remember getting thrown headfirst over the motorcycle. And I heard them say, don't move, please don't move. Blood was streaming down and it went on into the gutter. There's still the mark of the blood.
And then when we pulled up and saw her, blood was rushing down out of her leg and into the gutter. My husband's cousin took his shirt off and immediately started applying pressure to stop the bleeding.
Camille was holding my hand. I remember that distinctly. She was saying, you're going to be okay. And to hear those words were so important.
I really feel bystanders have a responsibility to act. Don't be afraid. You're not going to hurt yourself. You're not going to hurt the patient. All you'll do is help, even if it's just a comforting hand.
Doing something is better than doing nothing. That helps us more than they would ever realize. That can make all the difference between life and death.
You imagine yourself in a situation where you've been in an accident, you're vulnerable, you're frightened. Think about what you would want.
All right. So you guys saw with that how a totally perfect stranger was able to come to her aid and really provide some assistance that saved her life possibly. And that by the end of this section, we're going to be able to state the steps you can take when responding to a life-threatening situation. We're going to list different reactions you may have in a stressful situation. And we're going to understand the importance of practice and rehearsal to improve your response to emergencies. I'm not sure if that's going to happen tonight, but we can certainly talk about it.
So Ryan, I have the questions come in about liability.
Okay.
For volunteers to come in and help somebody as a bystander, is there a concern around liability around doing that and helping?
Certainly, that's a very legit concern. There are Good Samaritan laws out there that protect people who step in to help, so long as that they're not negligent or acting out of their scope of practice. So, we talked about earlier where you can act within your comfort zone. And as long as you can prove that you weren't negligent or break any laws, you should be protected by the Good Samaritan laws.
Great, thank you.
Of course. Okay, we're going to stay in our groups of 1 or 2 here. Just don't write, you don't have to write down what you see here, but just kind of picture and make mental notes of what you see. It'll take about 30 seconds. Note anything outstanding or obvious or inobvious that you see, or any considerations that you should take.
If anyone would like to be brave enough, you could use the Zoom hand and share. I won't put anyone on the spot, but I'm excited. Would love to hear somebody chime in.
Do you want us to just talk up, Rachel?
Sure.
Yeah.
So certainly, I mean, a big issue here, you said things we observe, safety is a huge issue. For this person to be stepping up with all the glass around and comforting this, what looks like a woman upside down in the car is, enormous, but I think the safety issue is enormous.
Yeah, Maggie, you're absolutely right. This, probably in a busy street or a freeway, so you have traffic whizzing by you in either direction. I see a gas cap open. There could be an active gas leak.
Yeah.
You want to find out from this person if they're able to communicate with you how many other people were in the car. Maybe they fell out when it was flipping over. All considerations to take in for sure. Okay, good one. Okay, next one. This was a very real event, pretty recent. Let's just take a few seconds to look here.
Any volunteers?
This is Marilee. I think part of this is, you need to stay safe because you don't know where that shooter still is, and then try to help whoever you can help. And here, I imagine they're trying to stop the bleeding.
Absolutely. So in active shooter cases, as we see with the more frequency that they're happening, it's a pretty chaotic scene, especially when you don't know where the person is or if there's more. I see kind of the rock wall there. They're taking shelter as best they can. I see people without shirts, probably use them as tourniquets to also stop the bleed, and they're keeping people warm. And people are on the phone, probably calling 911 and keeping them updated as well. All right, good. Another very infamous event. Take a look around.
Any volunteers?
Well, it's the same as the other one, sort of, although they don't know what caused it, the explosion. But there's that one man, he's waving for help, it looks like, that they need help.
Yeah, again, a very chaotic situation. I see some responders already on scene. And in this case, we'll probably be doing some kind of triage as best we can. There's all variations of wounded people. Yeah, probably some walking wounded and some people that are critically wounded and everything in between. So see some bystanders providing aid. And it's just going to be very chaotic for a little while.
So Ryan, in this situation, I mean, obviously we're looking at still pictures.
Yeah.
But in real life, when this is happening in a real-time situation, what is, when you come up across a scene like this, what are you first, confronted with?
Well, the safety of us and as well as the public. We want to make sure the scene is stable. Usually that includes law enforcement. Of clearing the scene for us to come in. But that's not always the case, but that's usually our cue to go, is when law enforcement clears. And then, you know, kind of like I was saying earlier with triaging, you want to find out how many people you have as best you can. And it's not going to be accurate right away, but you want to find out so you can get the resources started coming to you, the appropriate resources, both in type and number of resources. So they're going to need a lot of ambulances here. And so that's just one of the considerations to think about if we're coming up on something like this. Making
Brian,
sure it's safe and then,
what would be the protocol for 911 when you have something like this and so many people that are injured? Would you stay on the line and hold that 911 person, or do you report it and then get off and let them deal with others?
it's always good to report. You can't always rely on, and we'll talk about that in the calling 911 section, but you can't always rely on other people calling 911. But in this case, in this large scale and, you know, high visibility, this incident, you can probably count on 911 being already called. And then as far as staying on the line, they're not going to want to talk to you any longer than they have to, because they know law enforcement, fire, they're all going to be en route, and then they're going to provide the updates. Unless you have anything critical else, like you might be 2 blocks down and nobody there yet, that'd be something to pass along to 911 as well. But if this is what we see in this picture, if this was it, then you can count on somebody already called 911 and help is already coming. So they're going to be busy, and they're not going to want to hear everything you have to say if you're just one person with one of the many people wounded. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Hey guys, that's good.
Hello? And it would seem like, am I over here? Oh, okay. No, it would seem like.
Oh, I believe you went on mute there.
He wants to mute you?
No, he said,
There you go.
there we go. Okay.
Yeah.
No, it would seem like if you were there and you were observing, it would be really important just to like note what's going on so that when the first responders come, you can sort of step away and just give them whatever information you have. Like this happened 5 minutes ago, or whatever you happen to have noticed. That seems like would be a good thing to do.
Yeah, we would take all the help we can get in a situation like this, because the number of people injured and needing help are going to outnumber the people responding. So any bystanders that are able to provide aid or comfort, or you know, talk about bleeding control or shock prevention, that will all be greatly appreciated by any responders.
I remember reading that the Medical Reserve Corps happened to be stationed there at the end of the race, so they had people who were trained already on site.
That's outstanding. I did not hear that before, but that's really good to hear. It was forward thinking on their part.
So in this situation, and as well as the Las Vegas one, you know, obviously there's a lot of chaos and confusion happening because people didn't really know what had happened. Should people stay away in terms of, not because we don't know in that situation, or do you proceed to help as much as you can?
You know, that's a tough situation to be in, because as we found out later, there was other devices there that didn't go off. And so that's always a concern on our part when there's acts of terrorism. We're always concerned with secondary devices. So unfortunately, it's a decision you have to make at that split second, whether to stay and help or run and go, unfortunately. But just be heads up that there may be other events. And I don't know how, with the explosions that occurred, it still takes a few, you know, minutes to recognize that, hey, that was someone's trying to hurt us out here. That wasn't an accident. So it's just more stuff to keep in mind. That's a really good question. It's going to be up to the individual at the scene for sure.
One of the things, Ryan, when we were talking, when we were about planning this session, you had shared in your experience, when you come across onto a scene, people will come running up to you, trying to divert your attention. And
Yeah.
that, whether that is panic or whether that is just a mass, confusion. Can you speak to that? Because I think when we envision some of the scenarios that the volunteers and block captains might be in,
Yeah.
we could be experiencing some of that.
Absolutely. You're more than welcome to come up to us. With this class here, I know a lot of you were trained in CERT and you did get ready and your NRG very active. So you're planning for large scale but rare events, been trained to be self-sufficient. Today is mainly geared towards everyday accidents and trauma that occur around us that we might happen upon, whether we're run to the grocery store or your neighbor had a traumatic accident in his backyard. So that's what this is kind of geared towards. And so in any of those situations, if you can approach the responders, but just be aware that there's a lot going on in our world as well. We're communicating with 911. We have other resources en route. We're planning on what we're going to need and where we're going to spot our apparatus and all sorts of stuff. We will, however, ask for assistance when we get settled down. For instance, on vehicle accidents or small roadside fires, even structure fires, people want to come up and talk to us right away. But we are going to be distracted ourselves because we're gathering our thoughts and we're formulating a plan. But we will want to talk to you at some point and extract that information. And so the better you are at being a active participant and a good witness and a historian for us of events, that will be helpful as well. So I don't know if that answered the question, Rachel, but yeah, you can feel free to come up to us, but we are going to be busy, but we will seek you out as well. So either way.
Very good. Thank you.
Right. So as we talked about in each of those slides, there was somebody calling 911. People were getting moved away from danger. People were providing immediate life-threatening care, or care for life-threatening injuries, rather, sorry. And then people providing comfort to the wounded until they're able to get to safety. Okay, we're talking about earthquakes, large-scale disasters, very rare. Our more common ones, like I said, vehicle accidents, injuries in your yard, or close to home, and then kind of your rare ones. So those are the types. And so far, I think a lot of you have been trained up to the very rare events, which is also good to be aware of and ready for. Okay, so you can make the difference. Each one of the steps listed in this slide are things you can do to help. We're going to spend more time on each of these as we go through the training. And when you come across incidents involving multiple injured people, look around for other uninjured people who may be able to divide the responsibility and help as many people as you can. Okay, according to a report from a major metropolitan area, on average, it's going to take 6 to 9 minutes for EMS to arrive. That is us in Marin. Your fire service provides EMS. But it may take up to 20 minutes in rural areas. For someone with a life-threatening injury, 6 to 9 minutes may be too long. So this brief video highlights the importance of you as the first link in the chain of survival. So I'm going to try to not mess this up this time.
Any first responder will tell you that it is rare, really rare, to show up on any scene, whether it's a fire, whether it's someone sick, whether it's a cat in a tree, where someone isn't trying to do something. We do a pretty good job as professional medical response. You do a good job getting there quickly, but when we get there and nothing's been done, when we get there and there's been a huge time lag, when you get there and it's been 30 minutes, and the person is now cold, and we know getting hypothermic, getting cold when you're traumatically injured kills you. We know that. The person is in a position where they can't breathe well, right? And they haven't been getting enough oxygen. That kills you. We know that. 30 minutes is a long time. The person who's bleeding and they continue to bleed and there's a giant puddle of blood on the ground which should be inside that person's body. We know that. So can we keep them alive? Maybe, but it's going to be way harder if we don't have that citizen helping us out. You know, it's a team. We're a team. We're here to help you. We need you to help us.
People are afraid because they don't have formal training that they might make the situation worse. Really, it's very, very hard to make the situation worse. If you're in a situation where someone's suffering some kind of life-threatening emergency, it's pretty hard to make it worse for them than it already is. It's much better to try to do something. You're very unlikely to cause them harm. So it's better to, you know, at least give it a shot. It's the difference between life and death for that person, because we are quick, but we're not that quick.
If people knew that they could intervene and do something immediately, would help enormous numbers of people. The worst thing you can do is just stand by and do nothing.
Any for
All right. So chain of survival, you guys might be familiar with it or have heard that term before, but this kind of just shows you the, you know, series of events before you get to definite care. We got you, Joe Public, out there. We got anybody willing to help as a non-medical first responder. You have your local fire department, police department, pre-hospital medical care, who then take you to emergency rooms and then off to the traumatic surgeon. All right, a couple questions for the group here. When a life-threatening incident occurs, what would, number one, boost the chances that someone will help? And then number two, cause someone not to take action? So let's think about number one first, and then if anybody wants to chime in, feel free. What would boost the chances that somebody will help when something like that occurs?
Some training.
Okay, very good. This is what we're trying to do today or tonight. Training is definitely one of the things that could help. Anybody else?
Being in a situation where it's not life-threatening to you to help.
Right. And that's kind of what we do on a day-to-day basis. You know, we respond, it's not our emergency. So we're really good at separating ourselves from the situation and compartmentalizing it and making, you know, that's how we take ourselves out of it and try to stay calm. So yeah, when it's not your emergency, it's definitely more likely to help if you're not involved. Anybody else have any thoughts? Okay, we can talk about those further in the upcoming slides. Okay, what would be something that would cause someone not to take action?
If the situation's unsafe.
Absolutely, yeah. Like, I'm not going in there, or I'm not gonna jump out in the road, or the car's already on fire, or whatever it may be. If it's not safe, it's, you know, either, you know, I hate to say it, the person's probably not gonna survive, or already, it's a body recovery at that point. So it wouldn't make sense to put yourself in that much harm's way. We got a saying at work, it's, you know, risk a lot to save a lot, and risk a little to save a little, to kind of give you an idea on that concept. So yeah, you gotta assess every situation. If it's not safe, then it's probably not worth it. Okay, good. Anybody else? What would cause someone not to take action?
I think fear of hurting the person. If you didn't really know what you were doing, you'd be a little timid.
Yeah, sure. And we talked about that a little bit with the Good Samaritan stuff. Whether you're afraid you're going to hurt the person, or you're afraid, hey, if this doesn't turn out right, I might get blamed, and that's a very common, very normal reaction. Good, thank you. All right. We'll talk a little more about when people tend to help and when people tend not to help. In 2013, the CDC did conduct a research to better understand what motivates people to help and when they are most likely to help and what inhibits their actions. So based on a series of interviews with professional responders, survivors, and witnesses of various incidents in England, Israel, and Spain, okay, the CDC found that people are more likely to help when the emergency is unexpected, sudden, and clearly recognized as an emergency. They're more likely to help when they believe they can help by doing something the survivors cannot do alone. Okay. They also tend to help when they perceive an immediate threat to life for themselves or someone near them. Okay, so we talked about when that might be an instance not to act, but it could also be a time to act. If you can drag somebody to safety before, the fire gets worse or an explosion, whatever it may be, that would be a time where you may tend to help. The threat of danger appears to be getting worse. Okay, and they empathize with the injured person. So, for example, if they shared a smile boarding the train or made eye contact at some point, they had that connection with them earlier, they may be more likely to help. So that's just some from research the CDC did. And they also found reasons people hesitate. And those reasons are their assumption and expectation is that uniformed emergency responders will arrive on the scene very quickly and take appropriate action. For us locally, that is usually the case, and we're very fortunate for that. But that should not be a reason you don't help. So don't let that be a reason. Other reasons people tend not to help is they do not know what to do or fear that they will cause greater injury to the person who needs help. So what you just said earlier, that is part of their findings, that a lot of people share that sentiment. And they also fear that they will cause harm to themselves by helping, such as being at risk if another bomb goes off or stepping into a fire, stuff like that. So we're all more or less right on point there with what we were talking about. But in every situation, the choice to act or not is personal. It's not going to be a right or wrong choice. And the goal of this course is just to provide you with some basic information and skills should you find yourself in this situation where you would want to help someone who's seriously injured. So now we know there are some things that make people more or less willing to act, but in general, people do act when they see someone in distress. That's just our human nature. You may be familiar with the concept in social science known as the bystander effect. The impetus for the bystander effect were initial reports that a young woman named Kitty Genovese was stabbed to death as dozens watched and did nothing. This concept was that the greater the number of people present at the scene of an emergency, the less likely people were to help someone in distress. And this concept held true until recent research into the story found that, in fact, Kitty Genovese died in the arms of a neighbor rushing to her aid, and several people in her apartment complex called 911. So social scientists now refer to the hesitation to act in large groups as diffusion of responsibility. And those who witness an emergency in a group may not always step forward immediately, assuming someone else is going to, who's more qualified and prepared, is going to step up. But once someone in that group does act, others usually quickly follow. Watch another video here. Okay, that's not working. Sorry guys, it did work earlier. Okay. It does, I guess it's.
Don't you have to click on the picture?
Yeah, I am, but then it's not letting me watch the video because I have to sign in to confirm my age.
Oh.
We'll vouch for you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so sorry about that. I'm not gonna waste time trying to set up, sign in to YouTube and watch that video.
Before you move off of that one, what if an injured person says, thanks, but no thanks. I'd rather wait till, the fire department comes, the paramedics come.
That's their right. It's going to depend on their state of mind. If they're lucid enough and they can make their own medical decisions, and at least you checked in with them and they feel comfortable enough waiting it out alone, then you can say, okay, well, you tried, and you move on. But in traumatic injuries and those kind of events, people are going to want help most of the time, I've found.
And I'm just going to reiterate one of the things you had said, but you went through it pretty quickly. As you detach yourself from the actual event. See, rephrase it if I say it incorrectly. That to size up the situation.
Yeah.
So you do not become so personally involved and be able to maintain a level of calmness.
Correct. Yeah, and that's just, through training, and just, repeating those steps at work day in and day out, just really helps with the separation of, the incident itself and being able to step back and make decisions, and act calmly.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so before you step forward to help, it's important to recognize how the stress of the situation may affect you. In any emergency situation, it's normal to feel fear, and this fear will impact your mind and body. It's important for you to be aware of what may happen so you can recognize these responses as a normal part of your body's response to stress. It is normal to experience certain physical and psychological changes, such as those on the slide. Please recognize that fear is typically at its peak once we comprehend the danger of the situation. And also, fear has profound effects on the mind and body, and fear can influence action. Okay, so for the most part, most people, a life-threatening situation is not part of normal life. When your brain is presented with these novel situations, it goes through a process of trying to evaluate how much danger you're in and deciding what to do. And in this process of assessment, the first step is rationalization or denial. Like, did I hear that, or did I just see that? For example, survivors of active shooter incidents often report thinking the initial gunshots were fireworks. Well, that's the brain programmed to find an anchor for this situation, and the slides that you have in your brain already, and try to make sense of what's going on from your previous experiences, such as fireworks, which you may recognize, as compared to gunshots, which are new to you, possibly. This anchor allows the brain to determine how risky the new situation is and how to act appropriately. And when the brain gets stuck in the process of searching for an anchor, people freeze. You kind of see people vapor lock sometimes. Oh, that's what's kind of going on in their inside when they're in these situations when they're frozen. The brain's flipping through its memory archives. And once the brain has determined what is actually happening, it deliberates on how to act and then acts. And sorry, I'm going to draw more references to work here. We talk about the OODA loop at work, OODA, OODA, where we observe what's going on. We orient ourselves to the situation based on past experiences, and then we decide, that's the D, and then A is act. So OODA loop is this constant cycle of observing, determining how to act, and then actually acting. So that's kind of what.
Say that one more time. I'm going to try to put it in the chat.
Yeah.
OODA.
Yeah.
OODA? Is that what you said?
OODA.
OODA.
OODA loop. Yeah.
Orient.
What's that?
It's orient.
Yeah, orient or observe, orient, decide, and act.
Okay.
Pretty fascinating stuff. If you feel the need to explore that, you can Google that. It's pretty interesting stuff. Okay, so it's also important to recognize that while your brain is moving through this assessment process, you may physically experience things like tunnel vision, auditory exclusion, or other distortions of the senses. The body's programmed to focus its energy on what's determined to be the most important sense needed in the moment. Similarly, a surge of adrenaline will flood your body that may give you unusual strength or speed. The after effects of this may include nausea, vomiting, being suddenly hot or cold, or feeling shaky. These are all normal physical responses that happen as a result of being exposed to an emergency situation. Any questions on this slide or what I just was talking about?
So I think in our situation, we have people who may or may not, I mean, I could say for my own personal thing, I didn't think I'd be somebody who would panic, and I panicked at the Loma Prieta earthquake. Mm-hmm. So I know that I was not prepared for that. So you don't necessarily know yourself if you're going to be in that situation that you would panic, mm-hmm. or you're going to be helping somebody who's panicking.
Yeah.
So I think it's to be aware, and if you do turn it around in terms of this is when what you might experience,
Mhm.
but what if you're working with somebody who is experiencing it?
Yeah, it's good points. Obviously try to snap them out of it, so to speak. Get their attention. But it's very normal for distortion of time. When we respond, I can't tell you how many people say, "Oh, what took you so long?" or "What took you so? You guys were fast. That was amazing." So obviously, your brain goes through this thing where it seems like it takes forever, right? It's watching the pot boil or watching grass grow. But that is a real thing, distortion of time, as well as the tunnel vision. Those are probably the two most common things where you're focusing on one aspect of the incident and you don't see something else that was so obvious to everyone else. So those are just two examples I can think of off the top of my head for the slide. But being able to, engage somebody who's experiencing some kind of shock or being frozen or, panicky it's going to be challenging, but it's really important to kind of, grab a hold of their attention again and get them going, make them useful, and get to work helping.
I always think of this situation where we're taught when somebody's drowning and flailing to not go out because they'll take you under.
Yeah, that's pretty common. Very difficult situation, but yeah, you don't know, unless you're a really confident swimmer. Yeah, sound advice.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so we've kind of been talking about, we're not going to practice what we do in emergency situations to improve with the speed. We'll talk about more of that in the 911 section coming up here. But yeah. Just remember that you guys out there are the first link in the chain of survival, whether you're providing aid, you're the one calling 911, or you're having somebody else call 911 for you. That is the most important step, and you're the most important link. And remember that stress can significantly affect how you respond, right? We just talked about the adrenaline that's going to be rushing through your body and your brain trying to make sense of what's happening, and how are you going to step back and formulate a plan and assess what's going on. So just be aware of your body and how it responds in the past, and think about how you would improve that in the future. And then practice. I would say for practice, I would try to be prepared as best you can. When you're driving around town or walking through the neighborhood, think about how you would respond to a situation. Or if you're in a restaurant or a hotel, take a look around you and try to find exits, and practice that game. It's a really for me, my weird brain, right? That's a fun exercise. Just going into a new place and being able to, okay, if this happens, I'm going to go here, or this is what I'm going to do. Or I'm going to go there if this happens. So that's just different ways you can practice to help improve your ability to act at all, really, both quickly and effectively. Rachel, you want to take a break, or you want to keep going? We can power through the 911.
I think we could keep going, but I am going to ask another question.
Of course.
Chime in if I'm asking too many questions.
Okay.
For folks. I would like to see if people have ideas of how, if you've either you yourself have been in that panic situation, or you've helped somebody who's been in a panic situation, what did you do to get people to either calm down or refocus? What were some of the tools? And you could either put them in the chat or just share them online here. Just speak up just for a second here. Anyone have anything that they've had in the past that has worked?
I think getting them to, talk about something else, sort of distracting them so that they're talking about something that they can communicate with you, and not the incident at hand and the panic that they're going through.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Yeah, I can second that. Being being in the face of someone who's experienced traumatic injury, it's very common to use distraction. Hey, talk about something else other than, their legs almost missing or something like that. It's little, it's futile in the end, but at least it's something right now and right then, and you can get their mind off and kind of help, the situation at hand.
Captain Ryan, is that why you always ask the individual their name? So that you
Yeah, we do need your name, but also just to see, that's also a gauge of your mental state. If you're able to follow commands, if you know your name, you know your address, you know what day it is. We ask how many quarters in a dollar. We ask all these really silly basic questions that sound like, why are you asking me that? But it is for a reason. But yeah, that is one of the reasons that why we do ask you your name. Good question.
Good, yeah.
I was actually in a traumatic bike wreck, and for people to know about with mine, evidently I got up from the bike wreck and I was talking to people and I was trying to keep going to work, and then I collapsed and I don't remember any of it. Absolutely zero. So just because the person's talking to you and everything else, they may not be all there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point, Michael. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I mean, we have no way of knowing if you're going to remember that or not. But if any information we can extract out of somebody who's on the brink of consciousness and going in and out, but the fact that you're awake is good news. And that could have been like we were just talking about with the physiological responses of your body. That maybe your brain just shut that part out because it was a traumatic experience and is trying to shove that deep down away and forget about it. Or it could have been a legit concussion or something. There was a reason for that, but that's interesting. Thanks, Michael.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's go on to 911.
Okay, let's dive into it. So step one of this class is going to focus on the interface with 911, including which information to convey and the overall role 911 operators play. We're going to learn about why 911 operators ask certain questions and go from there. So by the end of this topic, we're going to be able to answer the 911 operators' questions, and we're going to work with them during the call to help the injured person or people. So along those lines, anybody have any cool 911 stories or experiences? Or has anyone been able to call 911 before?
I did. My husband had a major heart attack, and I didn't realize it at the time. I just heard him fall to the floor very early in the morning and went and immediately called 911 and did CPR. And
oh my gosh. What was the outcome for your husband?
Pardon me?
What was the outcome, may I ask?
The outcome was he made it. He was 100% blocked in the Widowmaker, and we were just very fortunate that I was able to do a CPR that I learned 25 years beforehand, and the 911 person talked me through it, and we lived close to the fire station. So we had, seemed like forever, but we had about 8 or 9 firefighters show up at the house. And the surgeon was on board, was already at the hospital. So we were very, very lucky.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. That's great story with a good outcome. So that second question, on a scale 1 to 5, 1 being not calm, 5 being really calm, how would you rate yourself on that call?
I think I was pretty calm.
Okay.
I was focused, I should say. I my heart was racing, but I was doing what I needed to do. And then when I did call 911, the 911 person was really helpful too.
Yeah.
So it was a combination of them, being with me and talking me through it and singing the Staying Alive song. And yeah, but generally I tend to be able to focus pretty well and then fall apart after.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, that's when, right, the exhale after everything's all said and done.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, the Staying Alive, that's right. Sidewalk CPR. I don't know if how many people have taken sidewalk CPR, but the cadence to which you're supposed to do CPR is to Staying Alive by the Bee Gees. That's what she was talking about. Okay, anybody else have any cool 911 stories before we move along here?
Well, this is a lot less dramatic, but I've called 911 while I'm driving on the highway and I see some, big obstruction in the road, like a box or a chair or something. I've made several of those calls.
Great. That's actually probably good practice, right? For the real one, you have some expectation of what to say and what they're going to ask and how to respond. That's great. Okay, so 911 operators are obviously highly trained. They're going to help you assess what's going on, take appropriate action, and be as safe as possible. They also have a lot going on in their headsets there. There's call takers and there's dispatchers. They're usually separate. So the call taker is who you're going to be talking to, and they're getting the information to dispatch most of the time. But ultimately, you want to call 911 as soon as you're able to. And if there's another person nearby, have them do it while you provide aid. Because before emergency responders arrive on the scene, you are their eyes and ears. We get updates all the time from people on the phone still, and then when we get there, they can hang up. But it's very important if you're able to stay on the line during the call. If it's not a mass casualty incident, feel free to stay on the line with 911 and provide updates and guidance. A lot of times, right, people are guiding us in very vague descriptions of the building, or it's a big building and we don't exactly know where to go. So that's also really helpful to take into account that, if it's a big building, we're going to have trouble finding you. Maybe have somebody flag us down, or be very specific with 911 to where you are. Okay. Always call. Don't assume someone else will, right? That's what we talked about earlier as well. Let's try to play a 911 call, actual call.
Sorry, County 911. What is the address of the emergency?
Well, it's my neighbor next door. She's in building.
They redact the address.
In the leg.
Shot in the leg?
Yeah, somebody across the leg shot her.
Okay, what's the address, ma'am?
It's what is it?
Okay, stay on the line with me, okay, ma'am?
All right, are you okay? Okay. I see that. Somebody across the lake shot you.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah. Oh God, I see it. Yeah.
Okay, you're saying it's not showing that validating. What's the building number?
Why don't you? It's building. You can. I'm right next door. Just use my address then.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, are you with the neighbor now or no?
Yeah, I'm helping her to get up here.
Okay, is she bleeding?
Yes, it's bleeding.
Okay, is there any way you can control the bleeding?
Oh my God, there's bullets right there, isn't it? Yeah, I'm gonna get something.
Okay, where's the suspect that shot her?
It's on her lower left leg.
No, where did the suspect go? The person
I don't know. It's across the lake. She didn't see who did it. I just heard it in my leg. I heard the gunfire, but I thought it was a backfire from the car, ma'am.
Okay, then you tell me right now. Okay, ma'am.
Oh, be careful.
How long ago did this happen?
This is 5 minutes ago. Scream.
Oh, man.
And I ran out my front door.
Okay, where are the injuries?
Pardon?
Where are the injuries?
The injuries? It's in the lower left leg.
Lower left leg?
Yeah, I know, honey. Calm down.
I know, but I got that.
They're coming.
I got all kinds of problems. Patient, she has diabetes?
Yes, she does.
Okay, is there any way we can control the bleeding?
I am, let me see what I have.
Can you get a clean or dry cloth and press down on the wound?
Well, the bullet's like right there.
I just don't want her to bleed out, ma'am.
Let me see what I can get.
Right? Especially since she has diabetes.
Yeah. Someone just shot here from across the lake. So put your dog in. Yeah. Right in the lake. Somebody across the lake.
Okay, can you point to the deputies where exactly it was from across the lake?
Obviously a lot longer than a half an hour.
Is that interesting?
Something, just give me inside there.
Okay, ma'am. Do you see any suspicious persons in the area?
No, I know we got the lawn service here, so.
But like where the noise was coming from, did you see any like a group of people or somebody over there?
No, I did not.
Okay, where exactly is it from your apartment?
It's right across. The lake, we have like a man-made lake with the water fountain.
Okay. Is it the side closest to Pine Ridge or where?
Here, we got. Yeah. Yeah, I know what I'm doing. Yeah.
Okay, ma'am. Is it coming from the front of the apartment or where is it coming from?
I can hear you right now. I'm sorry. Everybody's getting
Ma'am.
Yeah.
Okay, it's really important so that way the deputies know exactly what's going on. Is it towards the front of the apartment?
No, the back.
The back of the apartment.
Mm-hmm. The fire department will blow. Oh God, no, they're coming. Okay, they're coming.
They're going as fast as they can. Okay.
I think it came from from where the curtains are drawn. You think it came from there?
Yeah. So possibly came from like an apartment, not like.
Yes. My back was turned. I was walking with the dog and I heard the bullet in my leg. And I let go with the dog. He ran to the house and I went over there.
Okay, what building are you in front of right now?
Building 20.
Building 20?
Yes.
All right, I'm gonna stop right there. Hopefully you guys got the hint there with that caller. There's a lot going on. One of the first questions that the 911 operator was, "Where's the shooter?" Right? That's a very important question. Luckily in this one, it was off in the distance and nobody saw anything. So, but the lady was mostly calm, but there's a lot of distractions. There's people in the background. She's got the shooting victim to deal with. The 911 operator's asking her all sorts of questions. For the most part, she did pretty good. She was able to provide a calm assessment of the situation and where the injury was and so forth. And then at the end there, sorry for the poor audio. It was a poor sound on that call, but you heard the operator ask, where exactly in relation to where you are you to the building? So that's just all very important information to get across. All right, here's a little change up here.
Yeah, I need some help.
What's the matter?
With my mask.
Was it your mouth?
No, it's my mask. I have to do it. Will you help me?
Sure. Where do you live?
No, it's my mask.
Yeah, I know it. Where do you live, though?
No, I want you to talk to me on the phone.
No, I can't do that. I can send someone else to help you.
Okay,
What kind of mask do you have that you need help with?
I have takeaways.
Oh, you got to do the takeaways?
Yeah.
All right, what's the problem?
You have to help me with my math.
Okay. Tell me what the math is.
Okay, 16,
Yeah.
take away 8.
Uh-huh.
Is what?
You tell me, how much do you think it is?
I don't know, 1.
No. How old are you?
I'm only 4.
4?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's another problem? That was a tough one.
Oh, here's one. 5, take away 5.
5, take away 5. And how much do you think that is?
5. Daddy, what are you doing? Just playing math off the thing right now. What did I tell you about playing on the bed?
Sure, brother.
All right. So a little bit on the lighter side. 911 operators deal with a lot. They must have not been very busy for that gentleman to be entertaining that kid's questions. But they see it all. For us in Marin, our 911 for at least most of the fire agencies all go to, we call it Comm Center. It's run by the Sheriff's Department. And currently that's up at the Marin Commons off of Lucas Valley, where all the new Kaiser buildings are going in. That's our 911 dispatch center. So they're all up there. Okay. Under stress, your heart rates, can increase. You may talk quickly. You can shout. You're yelling, crying. Your hand shaking. You may feel like you cannot think clearly. Answer any questions as best you can. That's for sure. Take a deep breath, and they've got a list of questions, and they're really good at separating themselves from the incident as well. But they've got a list of questions that help the call flow and find out what the appropriate resources are to get going your direction. So it's very important. Okay, we talked about locations, the floor, room number, any kind of landmarks if you're not sure, so we can find you quickly and easily. Type and severity of life-threatening situation. They're bleeding. Well, what are they bleeding from? What caused them to bleed? So we can get the right equipment going, and we can relay to the hospital what happened if we can. Safety concerns, obvious dangers or ongoing threats. We need to help protect and aid everyone on the scene, including the person needing help, as well as bystanders and ourselves as responders. Okay. So be ready to share the most important information. Okay, we're going to skip the group activity. Yeah. We'll talk about each of these scenarios like we did last time. But here we got a vehicle off the roadway, upside down, looks like in a rural area. Okay, so when describing your location, you want to look at mile markers. That includes here Marin, out west Marin, or away from the main cities. You're looking for mile markers are a great way to describe your location. If you're on the freeway, the closest exit or nearby road sign, direction of travel is huge. On vehicle, even on 101, really simple vehicle accidents in a very obvious location, they get messed up a lot because people get mixed up in their direction of travel. They think south is north and north is south and west of this location or east of that location. So it's very important to get direction of travel down. It happens a lot, and I think a lot of that is the case of the 911. Your adrenaline's pumping. You may have misspoke, or you're not from the area. You don't know where you are, but you're northbound 101 south of the 580 exit. Very, very important to get those directions down if you can. Details, what's the position of the car? How many cars are there? More important details are injuries of the people in the car. How many were there? Are they awake? Are they talking? Are they in pain? Or maybe it's a non-injury. Nowadays, we see some horrific accidents and people are outside their car waiting for us, and they wave us off when we get there because they're not injured. Very fortunate to have the safety precautions nowadays in the modern cars, but find out if they're in pain and where the pain is, and obviously if they're breathing or not. It's very important. Just be aware of flammable liquids. In this day and age with the electrical cars, you gotta be aware of the battery and the high powered cables that are in the electrical vehicles now. That's something we are very aware of and try to identify as soon as possible. As well as if you're on unstable ground and any oncoming traffic. If you're on the freeway and you see multiple engines, we always try to have a blocking engine, we call it. And what that is one engine that's not really involved in the incident. Their main objective is to provide a block for the scene, for the people at the scene. And so you'll have a engine kind of pulled diagonal across some lanes of the freeway, and that's meant to divert cars around the scene and provide kind of a break for the people working on the actual scene. So in case you ever come across that, that's a common action we take.
Ryan, a couple of questions on the 911.
Yeah.
When you're calling from your cell phone, is that with GPS? Does a dispatcher able to use that information without providing the exact location?
Yeah, they're getting better at that. A lot of the times now, the cell signal will send a GPS coordinate, pretty much to the T where you are. And that happens a lot when they ping someone's cell phone who's missing, or a lot of times in the watershed up in, lately, a lot of people have been out in the trails along Mount Tam, and they don't know where they are, but the cell phones do occasionally give off a really accurate location based on the cell tower and the information from their particular phone. But it's still really good to know where you are at all times.
Okay, good. Yeah. And then another question, there's telephone poles have numbers on them. Is that something that is used
You know what?
by
That's not
first?
totally clear because when we get calls for power lines down, it's not a PG&E thing. They don't go by pole number. It's more address of the house or so forth. So I'm not entirely sure. I can't answer that question right now. What those pole numbers mean, but when we call for PG&E, they don't need them.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. So maybe the suggestion is not to use the poll numbers until we confirm it actually
Yeah,
means
because
someone else is using that information.
yeah, exactly.
All right, good. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. All right. So to wrap up, 911. Always call, get it started as soon as possible. Don't delay. Kind of the same with CPR. That's 911 is important. So that is the first thing that needs to get started. So hopefully there's more than just one person there. Okay. Provide as much specific information as you can when talking to 911, like where you are, what happened, how many are injured. We talked about all these, sorry, the severity of injuries, any potential hazards, and then follow the instructions. Like Amy was talking about, they're going to give, instructions. If you don't know CPR, or even if you do, they're going to say it anyway. They're going to give you instructions on how to do what you need to do. And that includes controlling bleeding, which we'll talk about later, and just helping out in general. Okay. Rachel, do you want to take like a 5-minute break? Oh, I think you're on mute, Rachel. Sorry.
Sorry, always happens at least once. Are we okay in terms of timing?
Let's see here. 4 2. Yeah. Yeah, we are.
Okay. Why don't we just take a few minutes
Yeah.
and so Ryan can take a little bit of a break and get his breath. And then we will come right back at let's do 6:46, like about that time. Just about 2 minutes here. Maybe we'll do 5 minutes. 6:50.
All right, sounds great. Thank you.
Oh, okay, thank you.
As well as to effectively evacuate injured people from ongoing danger. Okay, by the end of this step, decide whether to stay and help, move the injured to safety, or get yourself to safety. And also demonstrate how to safely move an injured person away from further harm, which will just be discussion that we can't demonstrate it. Okay. We've discussed in the first section, stress affects our bodies and minds. This is why it's especially important to pause and take a moment to assess the situation before acting. Something we do as responders. We're going to use all of our senses to gather information and determine what to do next. Okay. Another group activity. Let's all look at the slides. Make mental notes what you see, hear, or smell. What you may see, hear, or smell, and then look for hazards and resources. We'll just take a few seconds on each slide.
Looks like the car's on fire.
Yeah. Car could be starting on fire. You know, using our nose to smell, and maybe that's it's just hot radiator fluid, or oh, that's actual fire. It could be electrical, it could be gasoline, right? And looking around, see what we see anybody in the car. Maybe they fled. I see a house exploded in the background. I don't know what exactly happened here, but those houses are pretty devastated in the background. Okay.
Ooh.
Yikes.
Well, he didn't cut his finger off.
Yeah, that's a that's a good thing. He's got pressure on his radial artery there. That doesn't stop the bleeding. We can go higher to the brachial artery. Worry about the equipment, make sure it's off, away, de-energized. Maybe he's been by himself. Maybe he has been able to move for an hour until help arrived. So we just want to find out how long he'd been like that and stop the bleeding here and get him to definitive care. Okay.
On the circular saw injury, would that be something that you would elevate?
Yeah, always a good idea to elevate. Yep, good call, Karen. Okay, motorbike accident. What happened? What caused the accident? Was it a medical emergency before the accident? Did he swerve to miss a dog in the road? Or did somebody hit him in another car? Here with his arms out like that, looks like he's, you know, posturing. Maybe he's having a seizure. I see some faint smoke from the motorcycle. Looks like some computer generated smoke. They want you to get you thinking. So yeah, all things to keep in mind when coming up on the scene. Maybe it wasn't a regular accident. Same with trip and falls. When we go on calls, trip and falls, well, did they have a medical episode before they tripped and fell? So just stuff we're always thinking. Okay, bicycle accident, very common in our neck of the woods. A lot of bikes around. Very narrow roads. Okay, they were wearing a helmet. The helmet's broken. The bike's trashed. It's pretty significant mechanism of injury. Probably a high rate of speed involved.
Where's the bicyclist?
Where are they? Yes. Not in the picture, that's for sure. Maybe they got, you know, they've flown off into the grass.
But there is blood on the road.
There is blood on the road, so usually follow the blood. You'll find them. Okay. There's stuff to think about. Usually when we'll take the helmet with us to the hospital so they can see, you know, what, you know, that helps them determine also how significant the injury was and kind of guides their decision making. It can be helpful to see that. So just something to note. Okay. So here's kind of a flow chart we can use to take action. First question, do you feel safe here? If not, can you move the injured person? If not, then leave. Okay, if you feel safe, you do feel safe, you can stay, start providing care. If you don't feel safe, no. Can you move them? Yes, well, take them with you on the way out. So pretty simple flow chart here we can use. Okay, how to move the injured. While there's no one right way, there's many ways to drag and carry somebody more effectively. especially when alone. Look for people around you to help. If nothing is available, you can always drag the person from under their arms. That's always easy and usually quickest, where you get from behind them and you go underneath their armpits and you can drag them out, hopefully. But again, help is the emphasis here. Find somebody to help you.
Hey, Ryan, I just want to do a quick time check. We had scheduled to go till 7.
Oh, okay. I gotcha. It is almost 7. I'm so sorry. We can breeze through a couple more slides because we do have a few more steps. So I do apologize. If people can only stay till 7, that's great. If people want to stay on board, we can do that also.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so in terms of moving people, if you think there might be a neck or back injury,
Mhm.
at what point do you, and this, I mean, I'm sure this is covered more in the CERT training. We
Mhm.
do not ask our block captains to really take this on, but this is a situation where you might come across and be that person until help arrives.
Yeah, and as a block captain, you can be the quarterback, right? You can coordinate and start delegating responsibilities like that. Like, hey, can you go get a chair from inside so we can move this person, or go get a blanket to keep them warm, or use the blanket to drag. We, use anything and everything you can to get the job done. So yeah, that'd be great if block captains could kind of be that quarterback and coordinate before help arrives, for sure. Okay, here's a couple of pictures that demonstrate that first one with the one person drag using a blanket or maybe their coat. 2 people, the picture on the top right, first picture, it's a sit pick. We do that one a lot. Someone gets behind them underneath the arms, and another person gets their feet. Okay, one person, if you're feeling strong and you had Wheaties, pick the person up and take them. If they're awake, if they're not, or they're too tired or weak, you can put them over your shoulder, like the second to last picture or the bottom center. And then the chair, we do that very often, using a chair to move somebody up and down stairs or from one place to another. So as long as their airway is stable, and so are they. So again, use your senses, be situationally aware, and when you can, move the person away from harm's way using anything and everything, including your best judgment, until responders arrive. Okay, any questions on moving people or assessing the situation? If not, we'll go right into stopping the bleed, which is a whole nother, you can do a whole 4 or 5 hour class on this, and practice demonstrating skills.
We are anxiously waiting to have the Fader class return, which will then more thoroughly teach this, the stop the bleed.
Okay.
So
So
you
this
could-
one, yeah, this one will just be very brief discussion, but give you hopefully some level of knowledge to be able to help in this situation. Okay, so obviously arterial bleeds are the most life-threatening bleed. They're to be the ones under pressure, usually spurting, but really any significant bleeding is dangerous, and we want to stop it as soon as possible. Apply firm, steady pressure, elevate, like somebody said earlier, and understanding when to use a tourniquet and how to use a tourniquet. And we can use, they have actual tourniquets or makeshift ones as well. Okay. So every minute of uncontrolled bleeding decreases the chance of survival. I think this one is not so bad.
If you see somebody and you're like, wow, that's a lot of blood, or wow, that's a lot of bleeding, you should do something. That's significant bleeding. What happens is it's all about the amount of blood loss. We have a set amount of blood in our bodies, based on your size and other things. Generally 5 to 6 liters of blood. We know from medical science and studies at what point your body starts to have not enough blood, to the point where it's causing physiologic problems, it's causing problems. That starts around 500 cc, about half a liter to a liter of blood. Once we get below, if you've lost 2 liters of blood, in 3 to 5 minutes is pretty fast to lose that amount. It's more like probably 10 to 15 minutes in bad bleeds. But once you get to that point, And then beyond that, potentially, you can go into a state of what we call irreversible shock. And essentially, the tank doesn't have enough gas in it to keep the engine running. Irreversible shock is irreversible, which means it doesn't matter what we do. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how good your trauma center is. It doesn't matter how good your doctors are. It doesn't matter how good your paramedics are. It doesn't matter. Once you start that physiologic process of irreversible shock, it continues. We can't break that cycle, and you will die, or the person will die. The point, the only treatment for irreversible shock is prevention of irreversible shock. Don't let them get to that point. That blood belongs in the body. It doesn't belong in the street. So let's keep it there. No matter how we do it, let's keep it there. If you
Right, like the doc said, time is crucial. 6 indications that there is a life-threatening bleed are spurting, steady bleeding, blood begins to pool, blood is soaking through overlying clothes, blood is soaking through bandages, amputation, which is pretty obvious, and then pale, shaky, and confusion are all signs of serious bleeding. So as the doctor said, irreversible shock is irreversible. Time is of the essence. When your body loses half of the volume, it cannot survive, regardless of the quality of medical care. That's unfortunately the outcome. So very important to stop the bleeding when encountered. Okay. There it goes.
Pressure stops bleeding. It's one of those things in medicine that we've known for a long time. It's one of the things that it's a truth in medicine that's true today, and it'll be true in 100 years. Pressure stops bleeding. So what we really want the citizen to do, how do you stop bleeding if you're on the side of the road or in the middle of the woods and waiting for someone to come help you, is you have to put pressure on the bleeding. There's a couple things about that people need to understand. Number one, you got to understand a little bit about the anatomy. The major blood vessels, the ones that will cause bleeding to the point where you're going to die, are always deep under the skin near the bone. So they're always down, they run right along major bones. That means that you have to apply a lot of pressure. It's not just a little bit of pressure. It is a significant amount of pressure. Number two, it may cause some discomfort, and that's okay. You're not doing any damage. You're not hurting them. You're actually saving them. And number three, you have to hold it for a long time, right? You have to make sure you're holding pressure for long enough that the clotting process starts. How long is that pressure? As long as you can. It's until we get there, or until you can't hold it anymore. What people have a tendency to do is they want to come up and put a bandage on a bleeding wound. A bandage doesn't stop bleeding. All it does is soak up blood. And again, that blood that it's soaking up into that bandage, it should be in your body. It shouldn't be being soaked into the bandage. We want it to stop. So before you put the bandage on, before you make something look pretty, you want to put pressure on it, and that pressure is what works. If you don't get the bleeding stopped, even if you slow the bleeding, maybe you buy that person enough time until we can get there and completely control the bleeding. And then some bleeding can't be controlled. The wounds are too big. The artery is too large. The vein is too large. That's when we look at tourniquets, right? And even still, if you have a wound that needs a tourniquet, I want to put pressure on it while I'm getting the tourniquet in place. Because if you're free-flowing blood while I'm working on getting my tourniquet, you're dying while I'm getting my tourniquet in place. We want to stop the dying. We stop the dying. We stop by stopping bleeding with pressure, and then we apply the tourniquet, which then further controls it. That's the key.
Okay. Okay, that was Doc telling us how to stop the bleed.
Los
Pressure.
sobrevivientes de las tormentas invernales
Oh.
severas en Texas deben solicitar
Sorry,
la
guys.
asistencia federal. Para empezar el proceso, es importante documentar los daños a su propiedad causadas.
Sorry. Okay. Sorry about that. I kept going. Okay, so doctor said pressure is important, time is important, and here we go. Also important, find the source of bleeding. Difficult in head wounds. A lot of time hair gets in the way, and it's very difficult to find the source of bleeding in heads. And also another thing with head injuries and, cuts and bleeding from your face and scalp. It always looks like a lot of blood because it's very, very, there's just lots of veins. You got the main arteries in there, but it always looks like more blood than it is when it comes to your head for whatever reason. So just something to think about. If you do have something to put in between your blood, between the blood and your hands, obviously gloves are great, but shirt, cloth, towel, plastic bag, and then apply firm pressure and don't let go even when you think it's time. It's really important to keep that pressure on there so we start that clotting process. Okay. Tourniquets, they're starting to get out there. We have them with us. I don't know if the cops have them, police officers have them as well. And there's just great something to have in your medical kit if you guys are seeking suggestions for at-home medical kits or something to keep in the car just for something like this. It's really nice to have. They work great and they're really easy to use. Okay. So this is kind of the last resort tourniquet when pressure doesn't work and there's just, it's a massive amount of blood and we gotta really stop it. Tourniquet is the way to go. Okay. So instructions, I'm just gonna read the instructions off the screen. But you want to place as high up as possible on the injured limb. Usually tourniquets, right, are going to go on your arms and legs. You can't do anything about head or abdomen. So these are going to be limb injuries more than likely. You want to high up on the limb, over the artery, close to the torso, and it can be placed over clothing. You want to pull the strap through the buckle and cinch it down. And then you twist the rod until it stops the bleeding. It might be noticeable, it might not, but you just want to twist that until it's really hard. Like you think, I can't go anymore. Well, you can keep twisting. And then you secure it in a little clip there on the second picture on the bottom there. The pencil, the rod just tucks into the little plastic strap there. And then also make note what time you put it on. That's always important as well. If you can, if you have of the mind. Okay, makeshift tourniquets. If you don't have that commercially available tourniquet, you can attempt to improvise using material that's broad, flexible, strong, able to be twisted. Something that comes to mind is just a shirt, tie a knot in it, and then put a stick through the knot, and then use the stick as that rod to really twist and apply pressure. Okay. So again, pressure, 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 firm. Even when you think it's too much or it's hurting them, keep going, please. And if you cannot control the bleeding with manual pressure, then consider that tourniquet and continue applying pressure and do not remove a tourniquet until we get there. And then when we get there, we'll usually take a peek, or if it's doing its job, we'll just keep it in place. But we always do like to get eyes on it just to see and give a heads up to people further down the chain on what they can expect. But if it's doing its job, we're not going to take anything off of it. We'll just drive them. Okay, any questions about tourniquets or stopping the bleed? I know there's a whole stop the bleed kits that got mailed out for you folks in Corte Madera, I believe. And then again, that's a really in-depth class. We can maybe set up something later down the road. It's pretty interesting, very useful. So
I see that you can buy tourniquets on Amazon.
Yeah, correct.
If one is that diligent about being prepared, does that seem to be a suitable thing to do?
Yeah, I would concur with that.
Okay.
Is there a rule of thumb in terms of how long to wait before you would go use the tourniquet? Or is it a matter of just how much blood is coming out?
Yeah, how much blood, and kind of use your judgment. And like the doc said, like, whoa, that's a lot of blood. If that's your first reaction, then it's probably a good go-to. Obviously, you want to try something first and get something over the wound itself. I'm just getting my wrapper off my tourniquet here to show you guys just a brand that we use. So it's called, sorry, I know it's difficult with the background. So it's called CAT, C-A-T, Combat Application Tourniquet. And all it is really that simple strap and the rod held in place by the plastic C-clip. So very simple, very compact. You can keep it in a fanny pack like I have here, or in your car, like I said. So
Okay.
yeah. All right. So positioning the injured. Go back. Okay, by the end here, we're going to describe life-preserving body positions for injured person who is both conscious and not conscious. Okay, so when a person is conscious and breathing, please allow themselves to position them, or allow them to position themselves the way they want. You know, in those situations, the body always kind of knows how it wants to be, and if they're awake, they're going to be in probably the best position for them, where they're either struggling to get a breath or laying down because they can't stand up, or whatever it may be. But don't force them to do either one or the other if they're not comfortable doing it. So tripoding is what we call this position here. Either you can be sitting down, or after a run, we all know that that position there. You need to get a breath, so you put your hands on your knees and you lean forward, and it allows your lungs to get more air, right? So this is a common position for people in respiratory distress, or yeah, usually having trouble breathing is when you're going to find people like this. Okay, another down and dirty flow chart. Is the injured person breathing? Yes. Okay. Well, let's move the injured person into a recovery position. For unconscious, sorry, this is a flow chart for unconscious, because the recovery position is for unconscious people. So if they're breathing, just move them on. We'll go over the recovery position. If they're not breathing, start CPR. And here is that said recovery position. Legs are slightly bent. Top arm is kind of resting and propping up the face to keep it at an angle. Chin's raised forward. Left lateral is this person. That's probably the best position to be in. Left lateral recumbent. And this is specifically for any kind of vomiting that occurs. It gives it a chance to exit the body. And if you're laying flat on your back, you might have a chance at aspirating the vomit, creating further problems for you. So this is a good position if you're unconscious to be in, or move somebody in. Okay, risk is very small, but it's possible that moving somebody could cause harm to their spine. So any kind of traumatic incident, we call it a C-spine injury, is something to keep in mind. So that whole question about, you know, not wanting to cause more harm, you got to kind of weigh the balances of, you know, what you could be doing to that person if you're gonna cause more harm and they were just involved in an accident. Well, maybe they, you know, you take that risk because you know, their survival is more important than back injury. So just continue supporting their head and airway. Make sure the airway's patent. You don't want to move them more than you have to, especially when the spine is involved in the injury. And roll them as like a unit, like use a log roll. So you roll the person as one rather than twisting or, you know, putting undue pressure on the spine. If you just kind of use like a log roll, roll the person onto their side would be the best way to do that. Okay, demonstration, not going to happen tonight. Okay, key points. Obviously, if someone's conscious of breathing, allow them to be in the best position or the most comfortable position for them. Don't force them to do something that's not comfortable for them at that moment. And then unconscious, we're going recovery position, and we're checking the breathing every so often. And we want to minimize movement of the head and neck as well as the back. And again, that position is best because fear of aspiration if something were to happen, if they were to vomit. So that's why we put them in that position. Any questions? Okay. Step 5, we're going to talk about providing comforts, probably to us as well as the victims. I think they're talking more about the victims in this case. But you know, we're going to learn ways to help, comfort, talk with the injured people, as well as considerations for working with children and those with access and functional needs. Okay, main points include being able to use simple words to comfort and engage with the injured, use simple actions to provide comfort and practical assistance to the injured. Okay, so let's think about if we're in a position to provide comfort and assistance to someone else, if you have been. If someone's provided you comfort and assistance, what did they do? What did you do? What were good things or the stuff you remember about it? If anybody wants to share real quick, that'd be great. All right. No problem. So stuff we can say to comfort people, right? Share names, ask them their name, tell them your name. You can ask them, how can you help? What do you need? And what happened? You know, that's important. What happened, if they remember it, that's a really good sign that they remembered and they didn't lose consciousness and they're able to recount the events. And you know, what you can tell them is, you know, what if you saw it, what happened? Don't speculate. Try not to speculate. What's being done? So you want to describe what's happening, what's being done, who's coming, and what might happen in the near future. So all stuff that's pretty helpful to somebody who can't see or doesn't remember or doesn't know what's going on.
So Ryan, we had some people on this call may have participated in a training that we did called Detect and Connect, which was working with, it could be a family member, it could be a neighbor who has a level of dementia or Alzheimer's. And some of those clues, you know, messages that you had said on the previous slide are very similar of how to bring somebody through a situation or to sort of focus or divert what needs to happen.
Sure. Was that training useful for you guys, the ones that went through it?
Yeah, it was very useful. They did a lot of scenarios and yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And you can use all that stuff and all the scenarios that we talked about tonight. Those are all very useful in just ordinary. If you're the first person on scene, those are all, use those tips for sure. And then more this case, for traumatic injuries, we want to keep them warm. Obviously prevent shock. You know, we do it all the time. Offer a hand to hold, squeeze, whatever. Eye contact, be patient, understanding. You know, try to have that calm influence on the person that kind of really helps the overall scene and everybody involved. And then again, if there's more than one person, you know, it's up to you to kind of decide who's worse off. But you have to find out, right? If you're the only person, you have to find out who's worse off, how many are there total, and then go from there. Provide aid to the most needing person. Okay, and, improves blood clotting when you keep people warm, reduces stress on the body, and also provides a level of comfort. For those of you that have been shivering cold, you know how miserable that is, and that's one of the first signs of shock is when you start getting cold because your blood is shunting to the core of your body, and you tend to get cold. And when keeping a person warm, tips and things you can keep in mind is you want to remove any wet clothing. You want to place something between them and the ground, whether it's a cardboard jacket, a blanket, towel, whatever you got. It helps also to really wrap the person, if you can, in layers, and then shield them from any kind of wind or cold. If you can get them into a warm environment, that'd be also very useful. Pediatric patients and children on calls, always difficult. You know, they're not the best historians for themselves, and talking to them is just different. So it's really important because they do require additional attention, and they're still developing their language skills, and cognitively and emotionally they're still developing. So witnessing a traumatic event or being a survivor may be more challenging for the children because they may not have the words to express how they feel or fully understand what they've seen or heard. So it may be very upsetting for your young children in these events, especially when they're separated from their family or immediate loved ones. So it's important to reunite the children as soon as possible with their family and focus on reassuring. Obviously, we do it on our calls. We try to get down at their level and sit or crouch, so we're not, towering over them and this imposing figure. You want to get down and connect with them as soon as you can, and trying to build that rapport. You want to create a barrier or move the child to a place where they can't see the scene or victims, kind of shield them from that trauma. And then sit or crouch at their level, like we talked about. Help school-age children talk about their feelings, concerns, or questions. Use simple words like mad, sad, scared, worried. That kids or adults, those are all really good, easy words. We all understand them. So not just for children. Also listen carefully and ask questions to make sure that you understand what they're saying and what's going on. Use simple words again when conveying the message, and be aware that they may start acting younger for whatever reason. When they're developing, they could start acting younger than their age in their behavior and use of words when they revert back to a younger time. Working with those with disabilities and access and functional needs. Be considerate dealing with these folks. We want to talk to the person directly, use whatever means necessary to communicate with them, such as writing and gesturing. Offer to write down information to share with responders. You can ask what you can do to help, and trust what the person tells you. Take the word of a person who claims to have a disability, even if the disability is not obvious or familiar to you. Offer a blind or visually impaired person your arm to help him or her move about in unfamiliar surroundings. And then steps should be taken to ensure a service animal is cared for and treated for injuries along with the survivor. So all very unique but difficult situations. They're all going to provide their own challenges when we encounter them. So again, keeping warm, ask permission to provide help. We talked about that earlier. That's right on. Right, you always want to check in, ask first before you do anything, if it's not obvious, and then be respectful of individual needs, even when they're not obvious. Okay. So Rachel, there's just a few more slides, if that's okay. We can breeze through these pretty quick, and then there's a slide with some information and resources.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
We're almost there.
So you guys are all familiar with making a plan. You guys are really involved, and that's awesome to see. I'm sure you guys keep supplies in your car, at home, work. Hopefully everyone signed up for Nixle and or Alert Marin, and there's a new one coming out as well. Be on the lookout for that. And then obviously practice what you plan, right? We always want to do that. Kits. You guys familiar with these, I'm sure. I'll leave this up for a few seconds, so if you want to take a picture or write down, you get an idea. You can always add the old tourniquet onto that list. Okay, you guys are all CERT members, I'm sure. Medical Reserve Corps, American Red Cross, AHA provides CPR training as well. So if you want to dive deeper into any of these subjects, these are all great resources. Okay. And we are there. We made it. What time is it? 7:25, thereabouts?
Nice job. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
It's a lot of information. I mean, I know we had talked about, tying this in with the trauma and the panic. We were trying to integrate some of those themes in. And I think, a couple of people have mentioned the best thing you can do coming across onto a scene is take a deep breath. And I think that's really important before, if you're the first person there, take a deep breath, slow breath, and take the total scene in sight. Yeah. I think that's a really important message, and thank you for sharing that information, because I think, there's a lot. You shared a lot of information tonight. No one is expecting you to, know how to do a tourniquet if you've never done it before and from this video. So please understand that we want to be able to do additional training, and we hope to do that in person soon. But this information is really good in terms of if you are that first person, if you are that block captain who is, checks on your neighbors and you see somebody needs more help and following the protocol, but also recognizing in yourself, you're not to panic, and if somebody is panicking in front of you, how to deal with that person.
Yeah. Agree. What I like about this class is that at least gets the ball rolling, the discussion, right? Because what you've been trained to this point kind of involves some of this stuff, but not really for this day to day. You could encounter something, and then just gets everyone's mind turning and geared towards, okay, I could be the person to stumble upon a vehicle accident out on a drive in West Marin. How would I handle that? What would I want to convey to 911? Where am I? All that kind of stuff. So as long as we're all thinking along those lines and be prepared to help out, both before we arrive and also when we get there, we're going to really rely on people. Maybe not on the timeline that you want or that we want, but we will rely on bystanders all the time. They'll do, always will.
Well, great. Thank you so much, Captain Ryan Day. I know this is a new rule for you doing this type of presentations, and it was really, really great to have you and also to learn from your personal experiences. And we look forward to having you back again. We will continue.
Just let me know.
Great. Great. We really appreciate it. We're getting lots of positive feedback coming through. This is good information for everybody, whether you're a block captain, whether you're just you're the neighbor, for anyone who is out and about, and because we want to be that person who's going to help.
Yeah,
and
those people, you're here and you've done the previous trainings.
So yeah, those, thank you. If anyone has other questions, you feel free to send them to me directly. And if I need to, I'll forward them over to Captain Day. And we hope to see you again at a future training.
So Rachel, do you intend to distribute this recording?
Yes, I will send the recording out to everyone who attended this evening. The recording will also be posted on the NRG website for future viewing.
Okay.
And then we'll go from there. And so if any of your block captains, for the NRG leaders, if any of your block captains were not able to attend, please make sure you send out the video to them, and hopefully they'll be able to take the time to review. Or if you'd like to have a private session with your block captains for training, we can do that as well. Might not be Captain Day, but we'll be able to do a training.
Good. Just let me know.
All right.
All righty.
Very good. Thank you all. Appreciate the time.
Thanks, Captain.
Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.